Welcome back to the Great Detour. Today's conversation is with Isabel Melgarejo, host of A Time to Care, the Caregiver Podcast, and founder of Tum Coeur, an organization dedicated to supporting family caregivers. If you're not familiar with caregiving, it's basically helping out someone who can't fully take care of themselves, whether that's because of age, illness, or some other challenge. It's a role a lot of us will step into at some point in our lives, but it's not something we're usually prepared for. And it's something that's also deeply personal for me as well. You'll hear me talk about it in this episode, but a few years back, my dad got unexpectedly very ill, and I went through a really tumultuous time navigating his care and well-being while still trying to keep my own life afloat. I'd love to tell you that I handled it really well, but in reality, the whole thing was one big hot mess. Since then, he's stable, but adjusting to life on dialysis, and that's another reality that I'm regularly negotiating. And that's why I'm so glad I discovered Isabel and her podcast. She brings so much wisdom and compassion to these conversations, shedding light on the emotional and practical challenges of caregiving while offering support and encouragement for those who are going through it. In this episode, we dive into the impact caregiving can have on our personal identity, how to navigate difficult conversations with loved ones, and the importance of finding balance. Isabel also shares her own journey of becoming a caregiver at a young age and the powerful lessons she's learned along the way. So I hope this conversation brings you insight, comfort, and a sense of connection if you're navigating this journey on your own. Welcome to the Great Detour. I'm Jess, your host. In this podcast, we talk about life's unplanned paths, those experiences that challenge and transform us in ways we never expected. Through honest conversations, my guests and I share inspiring stories and practical advice to help you navigate your own journey. I hope these stories inspire you to trust your path, embrace change with resilience, and step into your most authentic, empowered self. Isabel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm so excited to have you, and thank you for spending your Friday night with me. I feel like you are my date for the evening.
Oh, it's always good having a girlfriend date on a Friday.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's always an adventure trying to find time to schedule recordings. So Isabel, similar to me, is a podcaster. She hosts a really wonderful podcast called A Time to Care, the Caregivers Podcast. And in addition to being a podcast host, she's also juggling her full-time job and the business that she runs called Tum Coeur. And it's a wonderful organization that focuses on providing family caregivers with support and resources. And that's really what I want to focus this episode on today. The aging parent chapter, the caregiving chapter. I think it's one that almost every single one of us will enter at some point in our lives. I started it a couple years ago, really unexpectedly. And, it's a really challenging chapter. I think most of us are not prepared for it. And then when it happens, we're kind of lost and just fumbling our way through it. So I'm so excited to have you on, Isabel, because I love the fact that you're doing this podcast and creating these conversations, because I think it's something that we're not talking about enough. And I'm really happy that you're bringing up the topic and we're having these conversations early, because I feel like it will just help us all navigate this chapter even better. So really, thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Jess. Yes, I don't think we talk enough about these sort of topics. I feel that we just show them away, and whenever they happen, they will happen. And instead of opening the conversation and making it something that could be beautiful, we make it a taboo and something we don't want to talk about it at all.
It's a really great point. So before we dive in, I was listening to your podcast today, and I learned that before starting Tum Coeur, you actually had a business as a professional organizer, and that kind of evolved into this caregiving chapter. So I'm curious, I'm always really interested in people's career journeys and how their careers evolve over time. I'm curious what that transition was like and how you went from being a personal organizer then to starting this business focusing on caregiving.
So several things happened in my life. I married my husband and I moved to the US. I'm originally from Mexico. I've lived in other cities throughout North America, in Canada, in Mexico, but I've never lived in the US. And I moved to Texas, and with COVID, I was in legal limbo for a good chunk of time. And when I started looking for jobs, I just got really tired of it and of not finding a job as fast as I could. So I got certified as a professional organizer. So I was going to homes, I was helping people declutter, getting rid of stuff, letting things go. And I started noticing certain patterns within my clients. And I noticed that all of them, with no exception, were dealing with the belongings of a deceased loved one. And at some point, they had lost their lives in the process of caregiving, and they have lost themselves with the clutter. So they needed somebody else to come and help them out. On the other hand, I became a caregiver at the age of 20. And at the age of 20, I had no idea what that meant. I didn't even know what it meant to be an adult and pay bills and be responsible for a house. And my dad passed away. My mom was finishing cancer treatment, and she was very depressed. And I think it was just like a bomb of things with her, figuring out her own health and also being responsible for a household. She was a mess. And within this process, I was responsible for paying bills. I was responsible for putting food in the table. I had to figure out how to pay college because I was depending on my parents paying college. And more precisely, I was depending on my dad to pay my college tuition. So I had to have a lot of very difficult conversations. I had to figure out life at 20. And I had to figure out a lot of things that probably most people wouldn't care to know at that age.
At any age.
Yeah, like most of my friends at age 20, they were worried about where they would go clubbing that night.
Mm-hmm.
And I was worried about going back home and figuring out what was going to be served for dinner.
That must have been really challenging. Did you feel any sort of anger or resentment?
At the time, no. But as time passed and I started thinking about several things throughout that period of time, I noticed that some of the friends that I had were not good friends. I ended up a relationship with a boyfriend because he was not there for me. And funny enough, several years later, he reached out to me and he apologized. My siblings were not there. And probably they were not aware of the situation that we were leaving because they were all leaving away. They had all moved out by that time. But when I would ask for help, they wouldn't lend a hand. So it was just me figuring out every part of the journey and making sure that my mom was okay.
That's a lot to handle, and it really resonates with me. I went through a similar journey, well, very different, but similar in the sense that my dad got really sick a few years ago, and I was his only child, and it just all falls on your shoulders, and it can be the most isolating experience ever. So everything that you're saying, man, it hits, just feeling alone, and then also, like, you really see who your people are, your friends are, and who they aren't. And it's a very sobering experience at times when you really need and want people to show up for you and they just don't. And it's challenging to navigate. But I love your honesty in saying that because I think that's something that I've experienced and that many others have experienced when they're going through difficult situations in life, is just really seeing who shows up in those situations.
Yeah, and I don't think we talk about it. And probably a lot of people would be there for you if they knew, but they just assume that you're okay. And we never say like, hey, no, I'm not okay. And I'm not just dealing with my grief. I'm dealing with a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, it's grief, it's practicalities, it's logistics, it's trying to balance your own life on top of your family's life. It is a lot to navigate. Did you ask for help when you were going through it, or were you trying to just shoulder the burden on your own because you didn't want to bother anybody else with it?
I remember asking for help in a couple of times, and the answer was no. And after that, I was done with it. I was like, okay, I'm just going to get things done by myself. And that was a huge mistake because if you don't share what you need and if you don't tell people, like, I need help with ABC, they're not going to do anything. But if you're very clear and knock on the door enough times, someone's going to answer that door, which is what happened right now after 20 years. And once I was in Texas, leaving all of these with my clients. And one day I was out of this job. I was not doing home organization anymore. And my mom fell. She broke her nose. And for me, that was like a huge red flag because right now my mom is in her high 70s. So there is a risk for falling. There is a risk for breaking a hip and just dying because one fall just leads to that. And it was different this time because I didn't let my siblings say no. I just put them all together and let them lay down the cards for them. And I told them, like, this is a reality and we need to figure things out.
Were they resistant to that?
One of them was. I think it's been really hard for him to understand that our mom is not 40 anymore, that she's not as strong and powerful as she used to be. And I think he's starting to understand that we all need support. So it is just understanding where we're standing and what is the type of care that we need.
Yeah, I think there's so much grief in watching your parents age. It's just coming to terms with their own mortality, and it's some real shit, man. I've had to face it myself these last few years, and I think with certain people, and I include myself in this as well, there's sometimes a level of avoidance where you don't want to face it, and it's really difficult, but then, you have to, especially when you're an only child or somebody who is responsible for their parents, you have to show up. But I'm curious for you, did you experience any of that grief or that anticipatory grief? And how did you personally navigate it and find that balance where you're taking care of your mom, but also not losing yourself in that process?
I think a lot of things depend on how we perceive them. And culture itself plays a great deal for all of us. And I think American culture is a lot of, we need to stay young forever. We don't allow ourselves to age. As Native Americans, for example, they're really good at honoring their elders. And the elders are the ones who set the pace for the community. And the elders are the ones who guide everybody, and they're the source of knowledge. So those kinds of things, in terms of how we perceive things, I think have a huge impact on how we see things. When we perceive that aging is something to be avoided and it's bad, then we don't want to talk about that process. But when we perceive growing older as the source of knowledge of all these experiences that we have built throughout the time, then it is easier for us. And I think changing my perspectives in that regard and knowing that I'm here and I'm living today and that I'm enjoying this moment as fully as I can has really helped me. And I think another thing that really helped me with changing the way I perceive things, when I was really young, for whatever homework from school, we had to ask our grandparents, our parents, siblings, what was their best time in their lives. So I grabbed the phone, I called my grandma, and I asked her, hey, what has been the best time in your life? And she replied, today. And I was like, yeah, but what about in the past? What about when you were in college or
Give me something juicy.
Yeah, like, I know what you're doing today. I want the stories from the past. And she was like, well, it is today because the past is in the past and I get to enjoy today as much as I can. And I'm having this conversation with you, and I have my kids with me, and she was just happy with that moment. So I think that also stayed with me throughout my journey in life, that I needed to live today fully and enjoy every moment. So I think that's another great way to see it, of just enjoying today.
I love that. That's something I struggle. I mean, I try to be present in the moment, but something I personally struggle with is anxiety. I am one of those people. I'm the classic type A, always planning 10 steps ahead, thinking into the future. But when it comes to your parents aging, oh my gosh, can I get into like an anxiety spiral sometimes? And I kind of can lose myself worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. And then I'm missing the moment with my dad, you know? Like when I could be enjoying a dinner with him, instead, sometimes I'll start asking him, did you do XYZ? Are you taking care of? And I'm like so like projecting into the future that I end up ruining the moment. And I'm like, what the hell, Jess? Be present. So I love that perspective of kind of staying grounded and focusing on the right now and just staying grounded in that. And what you said before about, I love that you asked her about her life. I think that's so beautiful. And I don't know if you've seen these books. I've seen them like advertised online, and I think they might be on Amazon, but it's like either for your mom or dad or a loved one. And it's like for them to write their story in it. And each day has a prompt, like your favorite day or what were you doing at this age? And I think, oh my gosh, how beautiful is that to like get closer to your loved one and know them a little bit more.
Yeah, those stories can be invaluable.
Absolutely.
Because they're so full of even part of your story and how you become the person that you are.
Absolutely. So in your experience at Tum Coeur and helping people navigate their parents aging and this chapter, what are the most common things that come up that people are looking for help with or that they're trying to learn or struggling with?
One thing that comes up around very often is how to have uncomfortable conversations. And I don't even know how to say that because I don't even like the word difficult or uncomfortable. But that's something that's very common. How do I talk about disease, death, and dying with my loved one? How do I talk about these topics with my siblings, with my support system? I don't know if you've ever been around doctors, but they're very open in the way they talk about the body and body functions. And we don't do that. So I think that's a part of what I've seen, that people are very uncomfortable with those conversations that need to happen, but we just don't want to have them. Another very common topic is, how do I make my mom/dad do whatever? And we have to accept that they're grown-ups making their own decisions. And maybe we don't agree with those decisions, but those are the decisions that they made.
Yeah.
So that is another common topic that comes around. I would say not accepting that they have different perspectives and ways of regarding life. And another very common topic is that, and this one I don't think most people notice, but a lot of caregivers lose themselves in the journey. They are so focused on giving the best of themselves. They are so focused on providing the best care, in giving whatever their loved one wants, that they forget about themselves. So instead of just remembering what they want, they're just doing something for somebody else. So for example, if they buy flowers, they buy the flowers that their loved one likes, not the flowers that they love. So that part of losing themselves is really heavy in caregivers.
I believe it can lead to burnout too. You know, you have to fill your own, I know it's so cliche with anything, but you do have to fill your own cup before you can be of use to anybody else. And that's something I noticed about your podcast. And first of all, I wish your podcast was around a few years ago when I was in the thick of it. My dad unexpectedly fell ill and he was in the hospital for months, and I was thrust into this caregiving position, and I had no freaking idea what I was doing and just bumbling my way through it. And I remember searching through Spotify for podcasts that could kind of help me navigate what the hell I was going through and just provide comfort. And that's something I've really noticed about yours. There's a lot of comfort, and it's not just about the practicalities of taking care of an aging parent or a loved one, but it's also about, hey, how do you take care of yourself? How do you be kinder to yourself? How do you not lose your shit during this process? So I love your focus on that, because I think when we're navigating aging parents and when we're navigating caregiving, it's so easy for all of that self-care to go out the window, you know?
Yes, we forget about ourselves, and it is so easy to forget about ourselves. Throughout my professional journey, I've noticed over and over and over again that when money is tight, the first thing that we cut are charities and nonprofits. But when time is tight, we cut what's most important, which is us and our well-being. We cut on going to the spa and having that rejuvenating time. We cut on the trips. We cut on having time with friends and family just for fun. So we cut on all the fun and things that fill out our cup every day. And I find that so sad and interesting.
Why do you think we do that?
I think we were educated to do what our obligations first. I don't know how you were educated, but at least for me, I would go to school in the morning, so my obligation was first. And then I would come back home, eat something, do my homework, have extracurricular classes. All of those were my obligations. And after doing all of that, then I was allowed to play.
So you're taught really to put yourself last, like put your joy, put your pleasure, put your needs after all these things are checked off the list.
Exactly. Throughout my life, there were many, many days in which I didn't experience any play because there was too much homework to be done, or I don't know, traffic was bad that day, so I didn't have time to get home early and do whatever I wanted.
Yeah, it's really challenging, especially when we're brought up that way. So then you're now in this chapter later in life where you're doing your best to fill your own cup. But then I think because of that socialization and that education, there's a huge guilt that comes with it, right? Like I remember my dad was in the hospital for 3 to 4 months and all his responsibilities fell on my shoulder and I was drowning. But there was one thing during that time that really sustained me. This is going to sound ridiculous, but I joined a kickball team. So every Saturday, I went out with my friends and we played kickball and then we hung out afterwards. And let me tell you, I lived for that. Every week I knew that I had dedicated time that was just for me to feel normal. And like I wasn't juggling my life and my dad's life on top of it. And I really credit that to like helping me get through that challenging time. So I love what you were saying about really making sure to prioritize your self-care, because I think it feels counterintuitive and it might feel a bit indulgent or even selfish, but it actually allows you to show up better for your loved ones.
It does, because you took care of yourself first, so you can take care of everybody else. And if you're in a plane and the cabin pressure is pressurized, what happens? You put your mask first and then any children or people that can't do it themselves next. Because if you lose consciousness, then you're not going to be able to help. And the same happens with your self-care. If you're burnout, if you're tired, you're going to be doing things half-ass way over and over. And mistakes are going to happen. So after doing whatever, you will have to clean up those mistakes because you were burnt out, which will just create more burnout and more work.
Exactly. And more resentment. And then you end up snapping at your loved one and, acting in a way that you're not proud of. So I think it's a really critical balance, a really hard balance to actually strike in real life, but something, we can all aspire to do while we're navigating that chapter. So tell me a little bit about Tum Coeur. First of all, what does the name mean?
So there was this story that my grandfather used to say about drums and how they would set life, the rhythm of life. And so that is the tum. It is those drums setting the rhythm. And then coeur is heart in French. And probably French speakers out there are going to say it's cool, but that's okay.
Oh, girl, I'm not saying it that way. So you speak French too?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh, that's great. So it's like a beating heart, kind of like the rhythm of the heart.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And so tell me a little bit about the services that you offer there and how you help people. Like, first of all, what type of people come to you? And then how do you help them navigate this really challenging chapter?
So the people that come to me are family caregivers who are overwhelmed, who don't know where to start or what to do.
Been there.
And need some guidance.
Wish I knew you a few years ago.
And we work through different stages. The first one is understanding where you want to be in this journey and what you want to accomplish or how you see yourself within this journey, because it's not easy and we often don't know where we want to be in this journey. So before things happen, you have to have a very clear idea of what you will do and what you're not willing to do. One of my clients, she was not willing to relocate to care for her dad, period. So that was it. So what is negotiable, what you can negotiate or not. So that is the first part. Then it is the plan of that. Then it's the part of planning where I walk my clients through what are the things that they need to accomplish and when they need to start paying attention to other things. So instead of making decisions when they have to happen, you make the decision before it is needed.
So smart. I wish I had this done. So with me, I told you my dad was thrust into like a really critical situation. Nothing prepared. We hadn't talked about a will, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, and it was one of the most stressful things. And it wasn't until out of that situation that we kind of got those affairs in order. But I love that you're bringing these conversations up early, because if you're listening and you have parents who are aging, I know it's uncomfortable and I know it's not something you want to think about, like your parents passing, but having those uncomfortable, scary conversations now and getting those things in order now actually makes it so much easier if and when something unexpected happens. And then you can focus on, taking care of your loved one versus trying to figure out paperwork and what you were going to do and what money you were going to use for this and that. So I think it's such an important service that you're offering, and like having people think about those logistics early.
Yeah. And even, for example, talking about finances, if you're going to be taking care of your parents, there might be a possibility that you will have to quit your job. So you might want to start addressing those topics with your financial advisor now, because you don't want to reach that time in which it is your peak of your salary and you have to quit. And then you will have to go back to work probably in your late 50s. It's going to be hard to find a job. And when you find the job, you're going to have to get a pay cut from your check. So if you start addressing those topics now, it's going to be easier for you in the future. And that's just one example. Same, you talk about the will, same happens. If you don't know, it's going to be so complicated when you have to deal with that topic as if you would have talked about it before.
Exactly.
And then the third step is about creating self-awareness and self-care. So how you fill your cup every single day, how you prioritize your morning routine, how you prioritize your evening routine. And it can be something like you did. I don't do it every day, but once a week, I have all this day for myself.
I love that. It's such a holistic approach to aging parents and just future planning. Normally you just hear it's like, all right, get the paperwork in order or get your finances in order. But it's not just that. It's so many things in one. It's taking care of the practicalities. It's taking care of the finances, but also like the wellness angle too of how do you, like you talked about before, not lose yourself in the process. So I think it's so great that you're offering this service for people to kind of start having those conversations and working their way through something that's, honestly not something we want to talk about or think about a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm curious for you, in this journey, is there something unexpected that you've learned about yourself as you've navigated your own aging parent chapter and having lost a parent, or just helped others along their journeys?
My first learning was how to have difficult conversations. Figuring out how was I going to pay college was probably one of the toughest. And I had to be very vulnerable, which is very, very uncomfortable. If you've ever been in a position in which you have to be very vulnerable, it is so uncomfortable, but it definitely pays out. So that was probably my first lesson. Another lesson that I got through my caregiving journey is to build an ecosystem, build the people that you want them to be there for you and vice versa. And I think that has been one of the biggest blessings of building that ecosystem throughout my life, because I know that there's so many people there for me that I can count on. And it is just like such a great blessing to know that I can count with all these people for whatever I need.
Community is everything. It really is. I do not believe we were meant to be alone. And I think, especially in America, I feel like we can be so siloed and be so isolated, but it's so important, especially when you're going through a difficult time, to know who your people are and to not be afraid to lean on them.
Definitely.
So your company and your services, anyone in any location can access them?
Yes. Anywhere in the world, as long as they speak English or Spanish. My French is not that good, so.
For anybody who's looking to learn more, where can they go to learn more about you?
They can go through LinkedIn. They can also go to my website at tumcoeur.com. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that would be a great place to connect.
And then listen to your podcast, of course. So
Exactly.
Well, I will absolutely link all of these in the show notes. I just would like to close with one final question for you. So for anybody who's listening who might just be in the thick of it in caregiving, or was just unexpectedly thrust into this chapter and they are feeling lost and overwhelmed and not sure what to do, where to go next, do you have any parting words or advice for them?
Yes. Find your community, find your people, because those people are going to be there for you throughout the journey.
It's such great advice. It's so funny that this is something that comes up in all my episodes. Doesn't matter the topic, but people always say, like, what's one piece of advice or one thing that they learned? And it's just to find your people. So if you're listening, it's a recurring theme. It's so, so important to find your community. Well, Isabel, thank you so much. It's been such a great conversation. Like, I really appreciate your own vulnerability and telling your story and all of your wonderful insights and nuggets. I think, having these conversations, it's just so important and we don't talk about it enough. So thank you for helping us to think about this and talk about this more. I feel like it only helps us navigate the journey better and just feel less alone. So I very much appreciate you and the really important work that you're doing.
Thank you, Jess, for having me over. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to The Great Detour. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love if you could leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. Have your own detour story? You can share it with me by visiting thegreatdetour.com or The Great Detour on Instagram. Thanks for taking this journey with me.